Come on, Livingston. We gotta go on and on and on. Together we can make it. We gotta go on and on and on. Come on, Livingston.
Knocks it through. Mullen bursting into the box. Josh Mullen.
Together we can make it.
Mullen's ball across, it's turned in! It's Pittman who's got it! Livingston leads!
Road is long.
Can they get the ball back in? O'Brien.
Lead! And Livingston have the lead!
Man, can score.
If we march together.
The full-time whistle blows and David Hayes celebrates! And the Livingston fans join in exultation.
Come on, Livingston.
Livingston have the lead against Rangers, and they are certainly rising to a few occasions on their return to the top flight in Scotland.
Come on, Livingston. We gotta go.
Hello and welcome back to Talk Livi, the podcast dedicated to everything Livingston Football Club and Scottish football, proudly sponsored by Stjarna Apparel. My name is Angus and today I'm joined by Euan. Euan, how you doing, man?
I'm really good, mate. Really good. Obviously, a lot better that we managed to get a decent result on opening day, and we went back to being that Livingston of old, didn't we? A little bit. The horrible bastards that came up from the Championship is the best way I can describe our performance on Saturday. It was a sight to behold. And looking at Twitter over the weekend and listening to our good friends Glenn and Callum over on Red Tinted Glasses as well, it's good to see that we're back to being those horrible, horrible, horrible bastards that everyone hates. And I'm all for it. What about yourself, mate? How you doing?
Yeah, definitely coincides with those thoughts there. It's good to have that kind of side of us back, Euan, but I'm pretty sure we're going to dive all into that as we cover that game against Aberdeen there, as we got a point on the opening day of the season. But as always, you can find this episode as well as all of our others on your preferred podcast streaming sites. Just search for Talk Livi and follow us or subscribe to ensure you don't miss another episode.
We'll kick things off by looking back at our opening day draw with Aberdeen as the Lions battled to put their first point on the board of the Premiership season.
Our women's side will make their SWPL 2 debut this weekend. We look ahead to their new campaign after a summer of change for the Lionesses.
Finally, we look ahead to our trip to Govan as the Lions take on Rangers, looking to cause a major upset.
Aberdeen were the visitors to West Lothian as our Premiership campaign kicked off. Despite eyebrows being raised over the team selection, the Lions battled to a goalless draw, frustrating Aberdeen fans as well as other fans over the country as well, Euan. What did you make of the game?
Yeah, it was. Well, we'll touch on that first of all, which was the starting 11. I'll be the first to admit, I raised a what? When I looked at the starting 11, I'd sat on Red Tinted Glasses on Glenn and Callum's podcast talking about what I expected our starting 11 to be based off of our last couple of League Cup games against Cove and Clyde. Pretty much unchanged from those games, maybe one or two changes in there, but there was quite a host of changes. Luigi De Lucas came in, Mikey Devlin was switched on to the left-hand side of the back three, which I kind of pointed out when doing commentary at the weekend as well. Mo Sangari came in, playing in behind Curtis Guthrie up top as well. So there was a few changes, as well as Jamie Brandon coming in on that right-hand side for James Penrice. So a number of changes, which I don't think any Livy fan expected, but good job none of us picked the team, because it ended up playing an absolute blinder at the weekend. What was your initial thoughts on that team selection, Angus?
Yeah, I think, like most Livingston fans, as soon as you see that Bruce Anderson, our top goal scorer, one of the brightest sparks of that Viaplay Cup campaign, isn't starting, you immediately kind of start to think a little bit negatively. Combine that with Stephen Kelly not getting in the team again as well, considering he's probably a more attacking player. I think it showcases that what kind of style of football may be kind of going into there, in terms of, trying to be more compact and contained and, trying to get people to hold the ball up and all of that. And I think that, against like a team like Aberdeen in that, in hindsight, it is a bit more understandable, and obviously worked an absolute treat with how we did carry it out. I think that we do just kind of have this element where you want to live in that kind of ideal world where your best players are kind of playing, but football's a more complicated game than that, isn't it? And you have to, there's tactics involved in it for a reason, and it's worked out this time. Maybe the biggie is the fact that we did try something similar to this last season against the likes of St Mirren and Motherwell, ended up 3-0 down at half time. Coming into this game against Aberdeen, who have been hotly tipped by, basically everyone to have a very solid season. They're probably the team who's expected to finish third, well, at least prior to the weekend there. So I think there was maybe concerns that, something else would kind of happen again. In terms of the defensive kind of lineup as well, the Lucas and Brandon coming in was a bit of a surprise just because of, the fact that like during the Viaplay Cup games, it wasn't necessarily those two who were opted for. But yeah, again, came in, slotted in perfectly well, and, delighted for it. And I think that's good to see that, we've got a squad here that, people can step in at any time's notice and, provide performances like that.
Yeah, exactly. As I say, it kind of caught pretty much every fan off guard, but you could see early doors in the game that it was going to be a pretty tight and physical encounter, and that's exactly what we got for the piece over the kind of 100 minutes that were played. Little kind of in the way of clear-cut chances in the opening 45 minutes. Mo Sangari had a kind of pot shot from the edge of the box, which has gone wide. We had a couple of counter-attacks where Nubly, for one, probably should have played Montano in on the left-hand side earlier on in the game. He does do it later on in the half. I reckon if Christian's ball's got a little bit more pace in it, Jamie Brandon gets on the end of that. However, it ends up in being a foul on Jack McKenzie at the back post. And then Duke had a header on the stroke at half-time that went well wide. So in terms of clear-cut opportunities in that first half, very, very little. But I think that, again, pays testament to how we defended. We restricted Aberdeen to very, very little. Again, touching on what was said in our kind of previews that we'd done with the guys on Red Tinted Glasses, they made a big point about saying how Leighton Clarkson will kind of have them ticking. I have to say we kept them very quiet all afternoon, in my opinion, and that was testament to what Holt and Shinnie did off the ball. Granted, they might have not been as effective when we had the ball or in possession, but it just shows you football's a game that's not all based on when you have the possession of a football, and the work that Shinnie and Holt did off the ball in terms of quieting down that Aberdeen midfield three of Polvara, Shinnie and Clarkson was, I thought, fantastic over the piece of the kind of 100 minutes that was played. There was a kind of half shout for a penalty in the first half on Miovski. I think it was Ayo Obalai. Nothing got made of it. What's your kind of thoughts on that decision?
I think the thing that makes it easy for them not to give it is that Miovski's not in control of the ball and that one of our players is more so. I think maybe if those roles were reversed, that it's a wee bit more interesting, I would say. Ayo definitely does have a hold of his shirt, but at the same time, Miovski's got a grab of him as well. And I think that that's possibly as well what's kind of went in the way where they've been like, well, you are both at it. Who do I punish for first? If Miovski starts grappling on the Ayo first, then lets go and falls to the ground whilst Ayo's got a hold of him, is that really a penalty? I don't know. I think, that would maybe be a wee bit soft, but I think over the weekend you've seen quite a few soft penalties being given, so I wouldn't have been too surprised at the end of the day. But I guess it's one of those ones, if it's for you, against you, that's what's going to depend. That's going to make up your mind for it, I imagine.
Yeah, I kind of echo your thoughts there. I think it was 6 of one, half a dozen. I don't think it's a foul either way, to be honest. I think it's more just a coming together. I think both players were at it, and that's probably why it's been overlooked in terms of being looked again by VAR. But going into the second half, again, it was kind of much of a muchness, albeit I think we probably edged it, to be honest, in terms of the opportunities that were created, albeit Aberdeen did have a couple of opportunities. Johnny Hayes with one at the back post, which he's kind of slid into the side netting. Christian Montano probably had two of our better chances in that half. There was one that fell to him on his right foot, which he's blazed over the stand. Obviously, he had a similar opportunity. This time it fell onto his left foot. You could see that he's obviously a lot stronger on his left foot, Christian. He found the target, albeit I think was a relatively comfortable save in the end for Kelly Roos. And then probably the biggest opportunity of the game was the header for Ayo Obalai at the time on commentary, I hadn't quite appreciated how much time Ayo had and space he had at the back post. He's done everything right. He's headed it down towards the corner. Again, I think it's just a really good save by Kelleroos, but it's a fantastic opportunity to take the lead. And then you're looking at probably the only other real opportunity, you would say, Aberdeen had in the game, which was when Dukes got in behind. But it's a very uncomposed finish. He's blazed it into the stand. And then we almost saw an absolute worldie from Mikey Devlin. Absolute pot shot from about 30 yards, which just landed on the roof of the net. And I think had that gone in, I think that would have summed up Mikey Devlin's performance, because I spoke about it during the week. He obviously had a spell at Aberdeen that was hampered a lot by injuries. I said it on commentary as well. You know, Bruce always goes to play Aberdeen with a bit of a point to prove, and I'm sure Mikey Devlin had that same attitude on Saturday, and he was outstanding, wasn't he?
Yeah, player definitely playing like he had something to prove. Obviously, not only against his old side, but kind of one of his first proper games as our kind of captain and whatnot. And yeah, I think that everybody has been saying this about Mikey Devlin, that if we can keep him fit, he's going to make a massive difference to us. And I think that was just a little bit of a glimpse there, getting shifted over to the other side of the back three as well. I think one of the things last season that was maybe a little bit hampering for us was that kind of changing up at the back. We never really had a consistent lineup there. However, somebody with the experience of Devlin and that, playing alongside Ayo and DeLucas, I think that leadership kind of really shone through there, and made a massive difference. And yeah, it's just going back to, I think Davey said it in the post-match interview, that it reminded them back to those Gallagher, Halkett, Lithgow days, and it's what we really, really need. We've mentioned it plenty of times in podcasts last season and then the preview ones for this year about like how we've been leaking way too many goals, and we need to kind of get back to that. And if we're heading back towards that direction, and this is going to be something enjoyable for us. It's not going to be enjoyable for a lot of the other opposition fans, I'll tell you that. If you've listened to the likes of Euan Cameron's rambling ons about how we'd get the game shut down and whatnot, but if we end up being that horrible Livingston side who's horrible to play against because, we're very tough defensively and whatnot, then albeit, and I hope Mikey Devlin's a big part of that for the rest of the season.
Yeah, don't want to just single out Mikey Devlin. I just thought, given it was his kind of Premiership debut and the fact he had been shifted across to the wrong side when he has played the whole of pre-season, the whole of the League Cup campaign on the right of that back three. But Luigi DeLucas came in out the cold a little bit after those League Cup games, and I thought he was superb as well as Ayo Obalai. Didn't put a foot wrong. The back three was just magnificent all afternoon, I thought. But there's another man who I think deserves a bit of credit for his performance on Saturday. It was only a few weeks ago he was getting booed by sections of our support in a friendly against Alloa. Curtis Guthrie started the game. There would have been a lot of eyebrows raised about that, starting ahead of Bruce Anderson. But you have to give the big man credit. I thought he had an excellent performance at the weekend as well. Really kept Rubezic on his debut on his toes, and he caused a lot of problems for their back three.
Yeah, completely agree. I think it's not been any secret that Guthrie's time at Livingston hasn't been so great so far. I think, for a large part of it, we've just been wanting to see more from him in terms of, kind of like application and whatnot. I don't think that's kind of came across massively well to our supporters. And I think that, we'll be the first kind of ones to admit it as well, that we'll be very surprised to have seen him play instead of like Sanderson. But yeah, again, coming in, making the most of an opportunity. That's what we're kind of looking for people at this club to do. We can't afford to have passengers in that. He's came in, he's played well there, and he's in hold of the jersey right now. Obviously, injuries elsewhere to Bruce Anderson may kind of make that a wee bit easier, but you're hoping that we can kind of maintain that. We can have him continuously being a pest and stuff like that, being a player that is going to be difficult for opposition teams to play against, and cause them a couple of issues. Obviously, the size and stature of him means that he should be a big physical presence and all of that. And, I think we started to see glimpses of that there against Aberdeen, him and Nubley causing Aberdeen back line, trouble. And it means that they always have to have somebody kind of focusing on that, because, if an aerial duel's going to come up, if he flicks it on, then somebody's got to be recovering that. But yeah, fair play to the guy. It can be very, very tough to have, the kind of the support being against you rather than supporting you, which sounds quite mental to say. You should always just be kind of supporting your own team players. But the reaction's been solid enough, and hopefully that can continue as well.
Yeah, I thought he was horrible to play against, to put it bluntly. I think Rubezic had a difficult afternoon up against him until he came off for Bruce Anderson. Just to touch on Bruce Anderson, I hope Bruce makes a very, very speedy recovery. It looked like a really nasty injury that he got, albeit I don't think there was anything malicious in the challenge, despite what a number of our fans' kind of opinion on it is on the forums, and I'll come on to that in a second. But obviously Bruce suffered quite a nasty cut. I think maybe a couple of ribs, maybe potentially broken. We'll wait to see what the kind of outcome of that is, but hopefully Bruce does make a speedy recovery. I'd also like to make a point, seeing some of the comments from Aberdeen fans online seeming quite joyous in the fact that Bruce Anderson was taken off on a stretcher. I think it's quite disgusting, to put it honestly. A young lad who's an Aberdeen fan came up through their youth system. I can't for the life of me believe that anyone would want to see somebody come off a football park on a stretcher. So shame on you for those particular comments. But talking about the kind of the physical aspect of the game, we mentioned that a number of our fans seem to take, in particular, quite a dig at Nicky Devlin. I don't really understand that, but I think Nicky was always very physical and competitive when he was in a Livingston jersey as well. But there was a lot of chat about Aberdeen being quite physical. For me, I just thought it was a good competitive game of football, and I think both teams gave as good as they got in the game. What's kind of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's just kind of funny, isn't it? Being like, it is that typical thing where if your team does it, it's, it's part and parcel of the game. If the opposition does it, it's, it's bang out of order. It's disgusting. It's disgraceful. It's just funny. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that, physicality isn't going to be a part of our game. It absolutely is. And it kind of needs to be in Scottish football. Everybody kind of always talks about that. You need that element of it in the game. I think that's why even going back to last season, like the Postecoglou Celtic team's one of the most impressive that I've probably ever seen them playing in Scotland, because not only were they so incredible technically, but that kind of physical nature, that kind of in your face, the press and everything like that, was the combination of that too was absolutely incredible. So you definitely need to have both of it. And the only thing that comes with this, Euan, that winds you kind of up about it is that opposition fans are going to pretend that that's not them. Aberdeen fans are coming away from it being like, "Oh, that's all Livingston." Like they didn't do anything.
To be very clear, I think it was 22 fouls committed by Aberdeen, 13 by Livingston. So if anyone was overly physical in the game,
well,
there you go.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because we're going to see it later this season with the likes of Motherwell are going to come and they're going to say like, "Oh, Livingston are a big physical team," when they're very, very similar. Like St Mirren will be known for it as well. I think that's the only thing that is kind of like the annoying part of it, is that people go on about big bad Livingston and all of that, and it's like, well, we see Aberdeen there, more fouls committed, less chances created. Yeah, Aberdeen were truly playing some beautiful football there, and it was just us who were ruining the game.
Exactly. Now, a couple of little talking points before and after the game in terms of new arrivals at the football club. First one being Dan Mackay, coming in on loan. He did actually make a little cameo at the weekend, coming on for Bruce Anderson, coming in on loan from Hibs. The manager spoke about as well in the interview I did with him, that he was looking for somebody who can play in the forward areas, in particular across that front three. You mentioned about getting somebody who can play a number of positions across that front line. Dan Mackay certainly fits the bill, doesn't he?
Yeah, very much so. On that last episode we were talking about there as well, we're talking about potential loan players. I think it was Alex Lowry had mentioned there.
Gone to Hearts, hasn't he? Yeah.
To Hearts, and I was like, as soon as I seen that he was going, I was like, "Oh, is that going to be us?" And I was like, "Oh, Hearts are taking him." Fair enough, to be fair. But Dan Mackay, exciting young player, can play across the front three as well. Yeah, pretty chuffed with that. Hopefully, it can be somebody who can make a little bit of a difference. Again, it'll be somebody who has a point to prove as well. He's not really had much of a sniff in at Hibs, and he's been away on loan the last couple of years. So yeah, I'm excited to see a wee bit more from him. It's a name that is recognisable as well. I think he's caused us a couple of problems in the past as well. Pleased with that signing, a new number 11, which I'm always a fan of too.
That's your number, isn't it? But yeah, Dan Mackay, I'm really, really happy with that signing. He had a couple of very good seasons. His initial kind of breakthrough seasons at Inverness was very good. That obviously got his move to Hibs. It's maybe not quite worked out from at Hibs. Spent last year on loan at Inverness, was heavily involved in their run to the Scottish Cup final. I think scored in the Scottish Cup final as well, if I'm right in saying. But the game I remember was the start of last season in the League Cup. I think in the group stages against ourselves at Livi, he caused us no end of problems in the wide areas. Very direct, very quick, very athletic. And I think he really fits the bill in terms of a player that we are kind of looking for in that area. I think he actually kind of is similar to Stephen Bradley in a way, maybe just opposite foot. He's a right footer rather than a left footer. So he'll certainly add a bit of quality, I think, and another really good option in that final third. There's one that's maybe a lot less recognisable, but seems to be coming with a bit more hype, is little Afalele Teto. It's been confirmed that he's signed, although not being granted a work permit, so it does look like he's going to spend the first half of this season certainly back in South Africa, and we'll try again in January to kind of get that work permit over the line. But I watched a couple of clips online. We talked about big physical Livingston. I don't think anyone can use big and physical with little Afalele Teto. I don't know how far above 5 foot he is, but it's not a lot.
Yeah, that is going to be a very intriguing one. Obviously, we're going to have to pay close attention to see, if we can gain like the work permits and whatnot. But I see it's like a 4-year deal as well, which is quite exciting to see for a young talent who's kind of came from nowhere. I just think it's going to be funny, as you said, big physical Livingston. I hope, like, if we do get him playing, but come January, whenever the teams are walking out, you have him wedged in between like Ayo and like Guthrie or Dugley. I think that. Remember, I think Newcastle did it, and it was Ryan Fraser and Dan Burn, and I think that will be a similar story just there. But I'm guessing, does that mean that we have? I couldn't tell you who the tallest player in the league is, but I would imagine that Ayo's pretty far up there, and the smallest player of the league must be Teto. There's surely not anybody smaller than that. So I wonder if that's like a thing that a wee stat that we'd maybe have both the tallest and the shortest players in the league.
Yeah, it would definitely be interesting to see that one. But I watched a few clips of Teto online earlier on, and Davey mentioned how he's not seen a player like him before, and Wales kind of at that age in Scotland, giving him a 4-year deal is a big commitment to that as well. I think we've only had 3 players in our history now that have ever signed a 4-year contract. Stefan Skugel, Shamal George last season, and now Afalele Teto. So it kind of shows you the commitment and promise. I think he's obviously, I mentioned this, more seen as a bit of a project, Afalele Teto, and again the kind of 4-year deal expresses that. But the manager's given him a big write-up. Obviously they saw him in their camp in Turkey and were incredibly impressed by him over there. So he's one that will, all of a sudden, Livingston fans are going to be taking a big interest in the South African top flight. And I've already seen that South African football fans have taken a big interest in Livingston FC. So Paul in the club shop might be happy. It might be quite busy shipping orders out of number 17 Teto shirts from the club shop out to South Africa. You're going to see entire squads of people with Teto shirts and the parks in South Africa. So it's all publicity for Livingston FC at the end of the day. But yeah, to kind of finish up on the Aberdeen game, we probably deserved to sneak that one at the weekend, but would have happily taken a point before the game. We're delighted to have Strana Apparel as sponsors of Talk Livi. UK based with a Swedish soul, we are Strana. Strana is an independent fashion brand from Scotland who create high quality and stylish attire for on and off the terraces. Inspired by terrace culture, lifestyle and music, all their clothing is designed using quality materials and workmanship to combine the very best style and fit. And all of this means you get a premium quality fashion at affordable prices while enjoying a simple and secure service.
As a bonus for Talk Livi listeners, you can get 10% off your order using the code TalkLivi at the checkout. We'll also have some exclusive giveaways during the season, so keep your eyes peeled on our socials for those too. And thanks to Strana for sponsoring Talk Livi.
Sunday will see our women's side make history as they make their SWPL2 debut at home against Kilmarnock. It's been a busy summer for the Lionesses with a new manager arriving, as well as plenty of new arrivals on the pitch as well. Angus, you're a man in the know when it comes to the women's team. I believe you're actually going to be doing the social media updates this season at games as well. How are things looking ahead of the new campaign?
Yeah, it's been an interesting summer with, all the changes that have kind of happened. I think with Paul kind of leaving, it's somebody who's been there since obviously the very, very start. So a massive thanks to him, like to Stevie Dickoff and, even Conor McCloskey, who stepped down as well, for, kind of laying the groundwork for the team kind of getting into the SWPL system and that. But yeah, Mike's came in, Mike Ross has came in charge, and, very, very encouraged by him so far. And he's very, very detailed. He clearly knows his stuff. And, just speaking to a couple of the players in that as well, that they seem to be very happy with the levels that he's bringing into the club and how prepared he is for a lot of stuff. Having a look at like some of their kind of like training programs and all of that, he's very, very committed. And, I think he's really hoping to take the best of this. And I think that obviously going up to a new league in that as well, we've had to see some progression in terms of like players coming in. And I think in that aspect as well, Euan, that there's a lot to be kind of excited about. There's quite a lot of players who have now joined there. I think we're up to 26 is the squad number now, with a lot of kind of key players there battling for positions. But I do believe that is a good thing, is in terms of the last 2 seasons, I think we've always had a very kind of solid starting 11. And then at times, like the substitute, like the bench, hasn't been maybe too great. And I'll definitely say that in terms of in the attacking areas of the pitches where, we've been used to having Jess and Jen up front, and it's been literally just them. They can't really come off for anybody to come on and make as much of an impact. That seems to be something that's been rectified here. We've brought in a number of our attacking options. Like Lauren Evans has came in from Hamilton. Seems to be a very, very popular acquisition, going based off of the numbers that she's kind of brought onto the reaction from the social media kind of stuff. As well as that, I've got Emma McFadden and got Anna Dickoff who's came in as well. So it seems to be a good number of players. I think as well, we'd obviously talked about last season that the centre midfield area was something that needed rectified a little bit. And I think that's going to be maybe one of the more interesting parts, as I'd say that the signing to sort of look out for, Euan, is Hannah Davey, who's joined from Boroughmuir Thistle, took in the game against East Fife away, and I was absolutely amazed, blown away by her performance. I think the game kicked off, the ball gets played back to her in the middle of the park, lifted her head to see if there's any passes on. No real passes were on, just kind of like shrugged her shoulders, went, all right, just dribbled, beat 3 players and played it wide. And I was like, she'll do for sure. So yeah, very, very chuffed with that. And I think that she's somebody who's going to be an exciting player. I think she's only 18 as well. So somebody who's going to have a very bright future there as well. But, not only is that Euan, but we've still got a lot of the old guard there. Tash Frew and Jess Murphy will still be heading brick walls down and everything like that to keep clean sheets at the back. The likes of Jen and Ashley banging in the goals up front as well. So yeah, I think that there's a lot to be kind of looking forward to this season. A good mixture of new faces into the team, as well as, that old kind of spine, hopefully keeping things good and consistent for us.
Yeah, it's a strange one in football that you don't often see a team that's been successful the season before then have kind of wholesale changes in terms of a backroom staff and coaching structure. But that's obviously been the case in this instance with our women's side. Mike Ross has come in. He's got on paper a very good coaching CV. I think the plan is that you'll be speaking to him later this week to do a kind of more in-depth preview for the new season. But as you mentioned, there's been a number of new arrivals. Probably one of the biggest challenges that he'll have is finding that best starting 11. And I'm sure you'll be using these pre-season games that he has had to try and decipher that. As you mentioned, a number of new arrivals. I think he was at Boroughmuir Thistle, if I'm right in saying before. There's been a couple of girls that have arrived from there, so he's obviously going to know those girls really, really well and what they can offer the side. But there's very much a core of a team that just won promotion as well from the Championship going into SWPL2 that he's adding to that, which is a good thing. I think sometimes you can fall into that trap of standing still and just going, right, I'll give all of them the opportunity next year, and then you can potentially struggle. Whilst I think he's added girls who have got even top flight experience as well, coming and dropping down into SWPL2. So on paper, it looks like we have a incredibly strong squad. but I think that'll probably be his biggest challenge over the first few fixtures, is trying to decipher whether or not what's his best 11. But he's certainly potentially got an interesting Scottish Cup tie ahead of him as well. We could be seeing, if we were to brush aside St Johnstone, we could be seeing Glasgow City rock up at the Tony Macaroni Arena, the champions of the country. So that would be an interesting tie.
Yeah, interesting for sure. I think that's a challenge that you've got to kind of make the most of, essentially. You're looking at a team like that who are, the champions of the country and, are a very, very good team. So, hopefully if we make it through, that'll just be a kind of an experience that you can kind of enjoy. And, hopefully the performance that we can take from that as well would not be too bad as well for us. But yeah, I think that's a very exciting time to kind of prospect to be looking at. You want to be playing against the kind of the best teams, and, doesn't get any better in the league champions. But I think you're absolutely spot on in terms of talking about the kind of the squad structure there, and in terms of finding that. I think that may still take, maybe a couple more games. I think coming into a team fresh from, from the outside and that, and not kind of knowing everybody who kind of is there and trying to figure out what is the best system to play, because obviously we've been used to playing like a 3-5-2 over the years, whether or not that's going to be his preferred option as well. Thinking the players who are more comfortable in there, can you switch it up? What can you do? Who can play where? Who can't? I think an example of that, Euan, is that Jen Dodds has been playing in a midfield role recently, rather than just being the classic kind of number 9. She's been kind of dropping into that number 10 to get on the ball and kind of make things tick, which I think is actually not a bad shout considering her technical ability. But I think that these preseason games have been very much an experiment for trying to figure out who can do what, who can play where, what will suit us best, and hopefully that will do us the best for the rest of the season, because we'll have actual options in terms of what we can pull out. Essentially, again, I think we could maybe have wanted a little bit more of a longer preseason, a little bit of a more time to get used to all these kind of players and that. But what can you do? And I think that the team that we have at the moment is more than good enough to to go and have a good start to the season.
Well, here's hoping that the girls can make a very good start to the campaign. They are at home to Kilmarnock on Sunday. I believe it's a 4:00 kickoff. The men's team are away at Ibrox at the weekend, so it's a really good opportunity if you're still wanting your Livy fix at the weekend to go down and watch a little bit of history. Your season ticket gets you in for nothing. I think under 16s going free. And even if you don't have a season ticket, I think it's only £3 as well, which you can get on Fanbase, the Fanbase app. So I'd really, really encourage as many Livy fans to get down as possible, because it's a massive occasion for the girls.
Yeah, the hard work that the team have put in over the summer and that as well, they deserve a good showing, from supporters and all of that. And as you say, if you're a season ticket holder, it doesn't cost you anything else to get in. A little bit of history, and yeah, hopefully we can, kick off the season very, very well, win the Livy. The Lions make their trip to Ibrox this weekend as their tough start to the Premiership campaign continues against Rangers. Rangers will also be looking to bounce back from, defeat against Kilmarnock at the weekend. Obviously, they have a Champions League game midweek before as well. Euan, what are your thoughts on this one? It's quite a strange one going into a league game against Rangers, where we're higher in the league than them, right?
It's not often that'll happen. I'm sure that'll change as the season progresses. I'm absolutely certain of that, given. But yeah, it's kind of a summer of change for Rangers is the best way I would put it. A number of new arrivals, a number of kind of high-profile departures, like Morelos, Kent, Arfield, Alanda, all moving on in the summer there, Al McGregor as well. And then a lot of new arrivals who are all a bit of an unknown quantity to a degree. And Michael Beale probably last year, coming in halfway through the season, kind of got a little bit of a free pass, as much a free pass as you can probably get at Rangers, because everyone realised there was a bit of a transitional period, but he's now got his own players in the door. So I think he's going to start getting judged a lot more. And so far this season, it's not off to the best of starts, obviously losing that game at Rugby Park, and watched the game at the weekend. And I have to say, I think Kilmarnock thoroughly deserved their 3 points as well. But yeah, you also add into that the fact that they've got Servette during the week and then actually play them on the Tuesday night after they play us as well. So we are sandwiched in between. So I can only imagine that Rangers will make changes to their side as well, which, if anything, is just going to cause that little bit of further disruption for them in terms of continuity across their starting 11. So maybe it's one of the better times we could have going to Ibrox, dare I say it, where they do have that priority probably of those Champions League ties, but they're also under pressure to get a win on the board in their league season. So yeah, a number of new arrivals. I've watched them a couple of times. My girlfriend happens to be a Rangers fan, so the games typically do tend to be on our TV when they are playing. But yeah, a number of new arrivals. Jack Butland in goals, like say Dujon Sterling coming in from Chelsea down south. And then there's a number of players in the forward areas. Danilo from Feyenoord, Dessers, Lammers. But the big thing I would probably say, having watched Rangers a few times now, is they seem to have a very distinct lack of width about them. It's all very, very narrow. Their forwards are all, I think, seem a bit much of a muchness. They're all quite inside 10 type players. And yeah, there's just a distinct lack of width about them in terms of the way they play. They've been playing that kind of 4-3-3. And all the width still seems to be coming out of Barisic and Tavernier in the full-back areas. So considering they're kind of reliant on the width coming from them, that's possibly an area of the pitch that we can exploit, is down the channels. If you look back to the game that we drew last year, it's down Tavernier's side. Montano's got in for the cross in for Nubley's goal early doors in that game at Ibrox. So you'll be looking to try and exploit those areas as best possible. But yeah, I think we'll take confidence going into the game. The fact that we've now kept, in 10 games this season, if you include pre-season, we've kept 8 clean sheets. One of those happens to be against Rangers, the behind closed doors game as well. So we'll be going into that game, I think, with a similar approach to the Aberdeen game at the weekend there, trying to be very, very tight, try and be compact, try and be physical where we can, and try and upset Rangers. And the classic kind of, when you go away from home to these grounds, get the crowd turning on them early doors, because they're under pressure. They're already under pressure. That's the reality. When you're at the Old Firm, you lose a game, you're under automatic pressure. So we need to try and escalate that pressure at Ibrox at the weekend.
Yeah, I think this kind of bears quite some similarities to when we went to Ibrox last season, where, Rangers ended up not worrying about, us, and they were kind of focusing it all towards their own dugouts and that, for essentially, obviously us scoring a very early goal against them helped our cause and stuff like that as well. But I think that one of the biggest things that we can hope for, Euan, is to have another lacklustre performance in the Champions League midweek. If they come off the back of, a defeat against Kilmarnock and then even that draw midweek in the Champions League tie, the fans aren't going to be happy, and there's going to be a lot of people voicing their opinions towards the team when they're playing on that pitch and stuff like that. And, if we can be solid, pragmatic, if we can be that frustrating team, then that'll just further escalate. But obviously that is a big ask, and Rangers are a team who can turn it on. There is a reason why they're one of the bigger clubs, is because they can bounce back from this adversity. How often do you see the likes of a Rangers losing 2 games in a row out with of teams out against like the Celtic and stuff like that? It's probably not too often. We've just got to go and take care of ourselves and try and be as pragmatic as possible. As you said, out in the wide areas, we've got to make sure that we're troubling them and keeping them quiet and stuff like that, and hoping that our three at the back in the box are able to defend any sort of crosses that are coming in. I think that happened against the Rangers against Ibrox last season, where they were just piling crosses into the box, and the likes of Iobel, it would have been Fitzwater at the time, and that were more than happy to just clear anything away, just boot it away as far away from our goal as possible. But yeah, I think again, the way that we played against Aberdeen there, that frustrating side, I think we've got to have a little bit more confidence in ourselves as well, that we can frustrate them. We've done, not too bad at Ibrox in the past in terms of that. Obviously, they've maybe got like snuck a goal to win like 1-0 a couple of times and whatnot. But I think this is kind of hopefully the right time to be playing them, and who knows what can happen.
Yeah, you kind of touched on the crosses into the box. One thing I would say about the signings that Beale's made is I think they're a bit more physical in terms of height, stature and things like that. So given the quality that they do possess. From I mentioned about the lack of width, but their two fullbacks are probably two of the best crossers of a ball in the country. So we do still need to be very wary of the delivery that's coming in from those wide areas, and in particular if they've got a bit more of a physical presence in the 18-yard box as well to attack those said very good crosses. So we're going to need to be switched on to that. But as I've said, so far it's something we've taken a bit of pride in. Going back to the kind of basics, as you mentioned a few years ago, we've defended our box with a lot of pride and defended it very well. How do you see us approaching it? Because obviously we took the tactic for the Aberdeen game. Let's try and match them physically. That meant the likes of Sangari came into the team, the likes of Curtis Guthrie, albeit Curtis Guthrie might have to play, given Bruce Anderson's injury at the weekend. How do you see us maybe approaching it? Is it maybe a game that you bring in, I don't know, the likes of a Dan Mackay to maybe try and stretch Rangers when you can?
I think that may be the interesting one. I think that the likes of a Guthrie may end up being sacrificed for another midfield body in there, whether that is like a Dan Mackay who can help kind of spring counter attacks, or maybe even like a Stephen Kelly who can help us keep the ball a little bit better when we have it, and try and play a ball over the top to likes of Newbley to run onto over the top. I think if we were to leave two players up top at Ibrox at most of the time, it would maybe be not so great for us, because we definitely would have to be tracking full-back runs, or one of the centre halves coming out carrying the ball forward, like John Suter or something like that. So I think that we may go for like that wee bit more tighter, compact kind of midfield there as well. Like so Scott Pittman came on and did well coming on against Aberdeen as well. So that might be another option to have just more energy in the middle of the park, to be that kind of nuisance to kind of break things down, and hopefully we can get a ball over to Newbley to hold up, and somebody can go up and support him. That's kind of what I would expect, to be honest. And that's probably nothing to do with, Guthrie's performance or that there. It's probably just sacrificing something up there to make sure that we're a bit more solid at the second toughest place to go in the league.
Yeah, it's interesting. As you say, you could fire Scott Pittman in there, almost play a 5 across, still stick with a back 3, and you could almost play one in behind, say, a Newbley up top. The likes of a Mackay or the likes of a Stephen Kelly could come in there to add in terms of if we do get the opportunity to break on Rangers. But it'll be interesting to see approach. Does he maybe even stick Sangari back in there just as another body when it comes to defending cross balls and set plays? But it's a good headache for the manager to have. It's a good headache because these players have given him options in these games that we've seen so far. But if I had to push on a prediction, Angus, what are we going for?
Do I go for it again?
Oh, now for any loyal listeners of the podcast, Angus predicted a 1 each at Ibrox, if I'm right in saying, and that was your first ever trip to Ibrox, wasn't it?
I never took Ibrox last season, said it'd be 1-1, got it spot on. Never seen Livy lose at Ibrox.
There's not many Livy fans that can say that.
Does he go for it? Screw it. 0-0.
0-0. Oh dear. I'm not going to be
Can't
quite
wait
as
for
confident.
7 months from now on for us to to look back and be like, did I really predict us to draw at Ibrox? You know what? We'll go for it.
In fairness, Angus, predicting a 0, we have been reeking of clean sheets recently, so it's not the worst prediction. But yeah, I fully expect, you mentioned it earlier on, Rangers losing 2 games on the bounce is pretty much unheard of. Even not winning in 2 games is pretty unheard of for Rangers, especially domestically. So yeah, I'm going to predict a 2-0 victory for Rangers. However, I do think we'll put in a very battling display, and they'll have to work for that 2-0. I think we'll make them work very, very hard for that 2-0. But here's hoping we can spring a surprise like last season, and there'll be a lot of very, very angry bears at Ibrox come full time. That's it for this week's episode of Talk Livi. Thanks again to every single one of you for tuning in, week out. If you can, we'd love to hear your feedback. Either leave us a review on iTunes or simply message us on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram.
As Euan said, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, so search Talk Livi to find us, and you'll find all the links to our weekly episodes on there as well. You can also find all of our episodes, including this one, on all good podcast streaming sites, including iTunes and Spotify. We're also on YouTube, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If none of those options suit you, all you have to do is head to our website, talklivipodcast.libsyn.com, where you'll find every single episode we've done over the last few years.
That's it for this week. Just a couple of wee shout outs. Thank you very much to Conor McCloskey for having me on commentary at the weekend. It was an absolute privilege to get to commentate at the Spaghetti Had for the first ever time. Also, massive shout out to our women's side. Best of luck for the weekend in your SWPL2 debut. Let's hope for another great week following the Lothian's finest football team.
Livingston, oh Livingston, realize our vision. Livingston, oh Livingston, to the